Joining us now, former chief White House advisor under President Ronald Reagan, Great America PAC chairman Ed Rollins. Your reaction to the president pulling out of this summit? Should we have agreed to it in the first place? Because it looks like South Korea's leader, Moon Jae-in, misrepresented what Kim was willing to do.
Obviously, all of that's true. I think the critical thing here is at least the president attempted to try. The chairman obviously didn't want to sit down and negotiate on the terms that we want to negotiate on. We want him to denuclearize. We don't want him basically to. This is not Obama. This is not John Kerry. We're not going to give him everything he wants. We're going to basically sit down, and if he wants to be a good citizen of the world, which he hasn't to date, then we'll cooperate and help his economy, which is, he's got a bunch of starving people there that are eating dirt and rocks and what have you. So my sense is they got a lot to lose. The sanctions have worked pretty effectively, and Trump is a stronger player than any modern president, and I think they've just found that out.
But it seems like Kim, and I mentioned Moon Jae-in in South Korea, the Wall Street Journal editorial page writes that that pulling out of the summit was good because it looked like it was headed toward a summit failure because Kim has no intention of denuclearizing North Korea. But it was after South Korea's president met with Kim Jong-un's sister at the Winter Olympics, it looks like he misrepresented the North's position.
But he has always wanted a deal. I mean, he basically is probably the most pro-North of any modern president in Korea. And I think to a certain extent, he may very well, it may have been wishful thinking on his part. But unless they're willing to play and do something productive for the world and for their own people, why should Trump go? Trump already benefited by getting the three hostages out, which is more than Kerry or anybody else ever did. So my sense is this is a different kind of guy. We're more than happy to sit down and negotiate in an honest way, but we're not going to basically be made fools out of and not give him the world stage so he can rant and rave as he normally does.
Rants, raves, demands carrots, he gets sanctions relief, and then does nothing.
Well, that's been the history.
Right. President Trump just tweeted this. Democrats are so obviously rooting against us in our negotiations with North Korea, just like they're coming to the defense of MS-13 thugs, saying that they are individuals and must be nurtured, or asking to end your big tax cuts and raise your taxes instead. Dems have lost touch. This is essentially a game plan. What the president just tweeted, this is how the Republicans should be running in the midterms. This is a bumper sticker for every Republican running against the Democrats.
Republicans have to find out, and there's a lot to do, that Donald Trump is the leader of this party, he's leader of this nation, and his agenda has to be their agenda, or there's no path forward for them. They may win some of these safe seats that they're sitting in, but the agenda today is the Trump agenda, and they need to move forward on that. And there's nothing wrong with the Trump agenda. Lower taxes, less regulation, all the things that he promised in the course of the campaign. And I've been around a lot of campaigns, a lot of White Houses. This guy has lived up to just about every promise he made and every promise he could basically get the Congress to go along with, which is what the American public wanted.
Aaron, this is the most astonishing thing, that if you sit back and you kind of ignore the vitriol that you get from the president and the hot language that he does like to use, this is a politician who's not a politician, because he actually is very focused on fulfilling all those campaign promises. It's not just the tax reform and the regulation rollback, moving the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, pulling out of the Iran deal. And then he gets upset and angry about those things that are not being executed, like the wall.
Promises made, promises kept. That committee is 2020. I mean, he basically went out, he tapped into the American public, he knew what they wanted, he communicated with them, and he's living up to those promises, in spite of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and most of Washington, and a lot of the Republican Party. He basically is remaking this party into a party that basically is benefiting the American public.
And if we can circle back to Kim Jong-un for a second, we know that he's had 2 meetings with President Xi of China. Do you think that sort of influenced his behavior as of late?
Sure. I mean, she is one of the 3 or 4 strong men in the world, and basically, North Korea has pretty much been their puppet for a long time. North Korea was created so that you wouldn't have Americans on their border, and I think to a certain extent, if he sees some weakness on Kim's part, I think he's propping him up and saying, you know, don't give in to the Americans. The Americans are going to take everything they can away from you, which we are, if we can, because it's bad stuff that he has.
And what do you make of some of the concerns that conservatives are having right now in protectionist policies, especially when it comes to trade. We're looking at Section 232 saying, hey, it's in our national interest to
national security
to protect our car industry, to impose certain tariffs. I'm worried as a conservative that should a different administration come in, progressive administration use this as a guise to do their own interests?
Well, at the end of the day, we have to do something. The trade policy has not worked. We had NAFTA that was all goodwill towards Mexico and Canada. We've taken advantage of. Obviously, other deals we've done in the past we've been taken advantage of. The American worker needs jobs here, and the long-term promise to young people particularly is we're going to create a strong economy that's going to be dependent on you coming out of schools, whether it's high school or tech school or college, and the jobs are going to be there.
Ed, though, the way that the trade policy has been handled, and it was very clear what President Trump said on the campaign trail, but with the fighting over ideas among his economic representatives from Mnuchin to Peter Navarro and Wilbur Ross and then Bob Lighthizer, the trade negotiator, they can't all get on the same page. And it looks like, whether you look at what's happened with China, what's happening with the NAFTA negotiations, the steel and aluminum tariffs, and then the proposed auto tariffs, it's a mess.
Well, your points are very valid. The reality is there's not a roadmap that everybody's and a communications plan that everybody's talking of. You have a whole bunch of people in the White House who want to be on TV every day, and they want to express their opinions, whether the president's opinions or not. And that goes for Rudy Giuliani, that goes for Kudlow, that goes for all the new ones. And at the end of the day here, the president has to decide his trade policy and has to have his people go out and implement it. Mnuchin didn't get any votes. The rest of them didn't get any votes. He got the votes. He basically has to have his plan, and they have to have a script. You can't just let people come on shows and talk freely about what their opinions are. Their opinions are to be given behind the scenes, and the president has to decide.
Should President Trump, and do you think he will, because you know the man, will he step up and say, all of you guys are not selling we don't have a strategy, and I'm tired of seeing you all on television making mistakes? Because, again, I go back to Wilbur Ross, with respect to the Commerce Secretary, him holding up cans of Campbell's soup saying, don't worry about the steel and aluminum tariffs, is foolishness.
Well, the biggest weakness of this White House to date, other than the president himself, has been the communication shop. They still haven't got that resolved yet, and it's been months and months. And so everybody's kind of a freelancer. Everybody goes out, and the bookers call them, and they go on the shows, and they don't think about what they're saying, and they talk too long, and they don't talk off a script. This needs to be a very scripted administration. I've been in a couple of White Houses. At the end of the day, you have a script. This is what the president wants. This is how you go communicate your message.
It's fine for the president to shoot from the hip, but everybody else better get in line with one single message.
I totally agree. And if you want to argue and you have different points of view, you do it behind closed doors. And if you're on the losing side and not the president's side, you just shut your mouth and move on.
Well, good thing Hogan Gidley's coming up. I hope he's listening.
Hogan's one of my guys. We work together for Mike Huckabee. He's a great young talent.
So he needs to help get these individuals in line.
Hogan, straighten up. 10 old bosses around you and kicking your tail.
You better not be let me just a word to Hogan, if he can hear me. He better not be standing in front of a Kia ready to tell us that the cost of a Kia is not going to go up if we got a 25% tariff on auto imports. But anyway, thank you, Ed.
My pleasure. Happy holidays.
I love you much.
Thank you. Thank you.